Welcome to Visions, Alice Merton's new podcast.
That's exactly it. Thank you so much for the introduction, Dan.
I see the visions on the screen, but they only play for me.
Action.
All right, so I'm Alice Merton, and with me in the studio is Dan Smith. Dan is the singer in a band called Bastille. But he's not just a singer, he is a songwriter, he's a Greenpeace activist. He's working on musicals, on theater. He has a massive love and passion for music.
Thanks for having me on is this the
My
first
very
episode?
first ever podcast where
Wow.
I'm
How are you feeling?
nervous, but also very excited that you're my first guest.
Thanks for having me. It's a real pleasure. What are we here to talk about?
So this podcast, we're talking about Visions. So my album, as you know, because we got to work on it together, is called Visions. And I thought it'd be really cool to talk to different people from like different industries and just understand the process of their vision from like the beginning to the finish line, but also kind of underline the really difficult parts that people go through, like the ups and downs, and just also those moments of self-doubt and just any kind of potholes you go through, because I feel like it's not really talked about that much. So my first question to you about visions is basically, what is the very first vision you've ever had or can recall? And was it about music? And were you able to kind of see it through to the end?
When I was a kid, I was really obsessed with horror films.
Okay.
Which is I watched this one called Scream when I was like 11, which I think is wildly inappropriate. But like it set me off. It's quite a referential film that sort of talks about the horror genre. So it set me off on this sort of, I guess, early teenage nerdy rabbit hole down through the world of horror and then into kind of weird alternative avant-garde film and through to people like David Lynch and Dario Argento. And that sort of kicked off a real obsession for me with the sort of lesser known, slightly darker film world. And like first vision, I think I started writing a horror film as a script because I think I wanted to work in film. I didn't quite have the wherewithal to go out and make films. Yeah. But I wrote this really bad opening scene for a film called Supermarket Sweep, which was a horror film set at a supermarket.
Love it.
Yeah, and it never, obviously, I never finished it. But that, I think, was the first kind of vision I had. And I think I was just being, obviously, massively derivative of the sort of horror films that I'd seen that I liked. And it would have been absolutely terrible. But that was, and to answer your question, no, I didn't see it through.
Do you think there's still a future?
I don't think
for
there's a
this
future
idea?
for Supermarket Sweep. Yeah. I guess for me, the reason that I ended up writing songs, I think, was because it just seemed like a fun thing to do, and not that it's easy, and not that it was easy, but it just seemed like much more achievable, you know, to sit down at the piano and try and tell a story or write a song, and escape somewhere in your head through the songs, is much easier than, you know, creating a film. Like, obviously, as you know, and as we'll talk about, it takes an absolute village to make music, to release music. You know, obviously some people can do it in their bedrooms by themselves and release it that way, and that's amazing that exists. But, you know, it also can take a lot of people and a lot of work and a lot of help to try and make a vision like a reality, right?
Yeah.
But I think with film, it's that times a million. You know, the idea that once it's written, you then, you know, locations and actors and cameras and
it goes on
lighting
for like 4 years.
Yeah, it's such a long process.
It's such a crazy process.
So I guess I've had having grown up sort of really loving film and TV, and I wanted to be a journalist, but ended up in a band and writing songs, and that's been such a privilege because it's allowed me through music videos to kind of dip into the world of filmmaking a little bit, to get to work with loads of really amazing young directors and crew and cinematographers, and that's been, you know, I think one of the best things for me about this slightly mad job that we have, and even calling it a job feels weird, but it is, I guess, is the ability to collaborate. Yeah. I'm quite solitary and can quite easily sit with headphones on, making songs, making an album, writing, and I do love that. But it's also it's so much of what we do is like understanding what you can't do, and then getting to work with people who are amazing, who you would never otherwise get to meet or work with and learn from them and all of that. So for me, I think I was probably a bit too lazy and not talented enough in film and didn't really know what I was doing and didn't know anyone. Growing up, I didn't really know anyone that like worked in that world. And all I knew was just, the books I read and the films I saw and the documentaries I watched. I love being in the studio and I love writing and I love for me, the excitement comes from having an idea or helping someone realize their idea and then seeing it through, right?
Yeah.
But other people and I don't love being on stage, as you know, because
I think that's one thing
Or
I think that's why we bonded a lot as well, is because we realized we love the songwriting process, we love the creating process, and we kind of hate the performing process so much that like I went to hypnotherapy for that.
I know.
And I mean, how is it for you with like dealing with the anxiety of performing on stage and stuff?
For me, I've sort of realised this with a bit of hindsight, but that gigging and playing live was a kind of necessary part, but it wasn't the bit that I enjoyed. I think I was always really nervous. I'm quite like self-conscious and don't love being on stage, and so I find when I say that to people, they always like laugh at me and they're like, "You picked the wrong job. You're an idiot," which is completely fair enough because I think the perception is that people who want to make music just want to be on stage and be the centre of attention. Yeah, totally. And obviously, when I say that that's like a necessary evil, like there are way tougher jobs and there are way more difficult things to do. But for me, it's not like that's not the part of the job that I love.
No, but that's why it's so good, in my opinion, to shine a light on this part, because I know you're someone who always like you defend it very much of like, it's complaining. We shouldn't be complaining because we have like the best job. But at the same time, there's a lot of parts of this job that we often don't feel like we're equipped for. Like we don't feel comfortable in it, but people assume that that's like second nature to us.
Yeah.
And I think it's really important to talk about those moments and stuff. So for you in like creating your visions, or like whether it's on stage or whether it's behind the scenes, what would you say have been the biggest struggles in that process?
For me, also, by the way, I really want to hear about your visions. But I think a lot. Growing up, being really into film and wanting to be a journalist, and not really thinking about a life working in music, meant that I was quite naive to it all. But I don't know. I sort of had this, like, I didn't love being on stage. I found it quite an uncomfortable space to be in.
Yeah. Right from the very beginning?
Yeah, right from the beginning. I remember doing my first like open mic night, and I had to get really drunk, and I really didn't enjoy it. But it felt like, I guess, just part of my naive perception of what it was to be a musician and to be an artist and be in a band was that was a thing that you did. So yeah, so stage fright for me, I don't know. I'm still not there yet. But like you said, when we were first
touring,
getting to know each other and touring
that's
together,
what connected us.
Yeah. Because I guess
hated it.
people always thought I was. I remember, part of touring and playing festivals, and you meet so many other bands and artists, and I always felt like a real weird outlier for getting so nervous.
Yeah.
Even in our band, like Kyle and I would get nervous, but Woody and Will were like, whatever, it's just a gig, get over it. So I'd be really interested to hear from you as well. What was it like for you? And when did you realise it? And what made you like do it and push through it? And how did you cope?
I've always been horrible feeling great on stage.
Sorry.
And that is the pun.
I've always been on. Sorry, I interrupted you.
I've always had stage fright. It's been something my dad used to drive me to these like piano competitions, and I'd start at the age of like 7, and my leg would just like shake profusely on stage while I was playing. And there was one concert where you could just hear like my way more than you could just hear the piano.
So really quickly, for me and for your listeners, talk me through. So you started kind of classical. You loved opera, and you were an opera singer for a bit.
Loved
right?
opera.
Yeah.
I wanted to become an opera singer at the age of 18. Got rejected. Well, I did like 6 auditions, got rejected from all of them because they said my voice needed to mature. Okay. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to go away and I'm going to study business.
Wow, that's a pivot. That is a
slight pivot.
Yeah.
But then after about 2 years of that, I really loved it, I decided to try my luck with songwriting, because I always loved writing songs.
Yeah. And had you been doing it for fun, naturally anyway, sitting down at the piano and writing, or?
I'd say kind of, yeah. It was more of like an outlet. like you mentioned as well with like films and stuff, it felt just like a way to process things that had happened in my life. So like moving around a lot, I felt like those were the first kind of inspirations. Like the first song I wrote was called Lighthouse, like little lighthouse on the hill, will you help me find my way back home tonight?
That's
So
nice.
cheesy. But it was like, I just felt lost. I think as a kid, when you move around a bunch, you're just kind of like, I don't know where my home is and I'd really like to find it.
Yeah.
And so for me, it was kind of like a home. Music has always been like a best friend, and I treat it still like a best friend. Like I feel like if I'm not being loyal to it, or if I'm not, doing my part in the friendship, I'm losing. I'm not doing a good. It's so weird, but it's like, yeah, I always consider music as like my best friend.
That's so nice.
It's
As in,
weird.
and yeah, it's interesting that you talk about it like it's like a relationship that needs work.
Yeah,
that needs looking
because
after.
I genuinely think it is, because for me, music has always been like, it's not this thing that I've always seen as like, oh, this is how I want to earn my money. It's more of like, I trust you that you're going to be there for me when I feel really shit, and let's just keep doing this together because you're this like one constant in my life.
It's your lighthouse.
It's my
It's so weird hearing you say that. I'm exactly the same. I'm very bad at sort of putting words to these things in quite as poetic a way as you just did. But yeah, it's this thing. I think about, mindfulness and the things that people do to switch off, be that read a book or like play sport or do a puzzle, coloring in, like whatever it might be, those things where your brain is slightly switched off but kind of engaged. Yeah. And I realized over the years that for me it's just writing.
It's writing.
It's
writing
and
songs. It's coming up with melodies. Yeah. Because it's your home. It just feels so good.
It is so nice, and I think that's
and discovering that for me was like so nice to have that. But then the performing side of it, and for me, I don't know if you remember Ziggit Festival, but we played it like 4 or 5 years ago or whatever. And I remember we had to restart a song, and I was so upset because obviously it takes like a lot of courage to go on stage and sing anyway. But then restarting the song and coming off stage and thinking, fuck, this is the worst thing that's ever happened to me, and I hate this, and I hate performing, and it's never getting better. And I just remember thinking like, this is not what I want to do with my life. Yeah. And I think that was a big point for me where I started.
Can I just say, sorry, that was such a fucking awesome gig. As your friend and as a fan that was watching it, it was so good.
For context, we were both at the gig. Yeah. You played after us. And I think you also came off afterwards.
And Ziggit is a festival in Hungary.
Budapest.
Yeah.
And I think we both came off after that festival hating our performance, kind of. And I remember, because Will said this to me, because I came off crying, basically. And I remember you said to Will, or he said this to me, he's like, wow, Dan just said to me, it's like the female version of me. And I think that was really funny, because that was a moment where I realized, also when you mentioned that Regina Spektor was a big part of your like inspiration, I feel like I realized we were really similar in a lot of ways, not just our scars, but like,
it's horrible to see. It's one of those weird things, isn't it? And like, it was horrible to see how upset you were, particularly from my perspective, and when as your friend and as a fan, like obviously awful to see you upset, but also having just watched the gig and being like, in my reality, that was brilliant. You sounded incredible. And it's funny, I guess it just speaks to how kind of up in our heads we can be. When you're out on stage, you are not only everything that comes with, being on stage in front of lots of people, which to some is easy and fine. And to others like us, like it just doesn't feel like a natural place to be.
Yeah.
But you're also, I think, as the writer and the artist, you feel like, whether this is true or not, you're kind of carrying the whole project at that moment and everyone. And
you're driving the ship.
Yeah, and there's something as a lead singer or a front person or whatever that you're like, everyone's there and you're like a family on stage, but at the same time it can feel like it falls on you. But yeah, I know that feeling so well, and it was so interesting to see it in you, and like horrible to see it in you. And I know if, the people that I tour with, my friends, my bandmates, our crew, like to see me having a bad time on stage or me coming off stage and beating myself up about it, like it's rubbish. And I wish I could not be like that. Like I so wish
you want to step out of it. And,
it's not the most important thing in the world.
Whatever.
But you worked on it, right? You had hypnotherapy.
So I went to hypnotherapy.
Was that after Ziggit or before?
That was it was before and after. So it was that whole process, I think, during COVID, because I think we went on tour with you guys just as COVID had kind of slowly opened up. And I realized like, it's so difficult for me to be on stage without having panic attacks or meltdowns, coming off stage, hating everything. So yeah, I went to a few hypnotherapy sessions, and it was really cool because he kind of reprograms your brain. He kind of makes you start connecting different points. So like I would have to go on stage in the trance that I was in, but I'd have to connect it with different like senses. So he'd be like, "What are you smelling?" And I'd have to pick something that kind of that I love the smell of. So I picked popcorn because sometimes
Great choice.
right.
Great choice. I wouldn't have thought that.
And there's like gigs where they just randomly have popcorn sometimes in the audience. So I was like, yeah, sure, this seems normal.
And like not a huge leap. Yeah, sorry.
No, and also like going to the movies and stuff. I love going to the movies. I love just sitting down, eating popcorn. It gives me such this like a hygge feeling.
Yeah.
And so that for me started helping and just kind of going through it.
So sorry to interrupt. So he'd say, when you're walking out, think of popcorn, or would he get you to actually be smelling it?
I would have to smell popcorn.
So you have popcorn on your rider?
No, weirdly not. No, it has to be in your head.
Oh, okay,
you have to
imagine the smell of popcorn.
You have to imagine smelling popcorn. You have to imagine what you're feeling, what you're tasting, what you're going through in your mind, and he puts you in that situation, and you're basically connecting these negative associations with positive associations, and making that connection like just rewiring your brain.
Wow, that's so interesting.
And it really helped me. It
helped.
really helped me. And for some odd reason, yeah, sometimes when I'm super nervous, I'll go just before I go on stage, I'll like force myself to smell popcorn.
That's so interesting.
And it makes me calm. Yeah.
Oh, I'm so glad you found something that helps. That's amazing.
What about you? Have you like? I feel like it's gotten a lot better than the past few years with your anxiety.
It kind of wavers a lot. I think I'm really self-conscious. I'm not a great singer, and I don't feel like naturally like I like that I have a distinctive voice, but it can be a help and a hindrance. But I'm not trained. I'm not technically not a great singer. So,
but you know you are a great singer.
I don't think that.
Okay,
that's very kind of you to say. But I think on tour, like particularly historically, we would go out a lot, and I think because I found being on stage a bit of a struggle, we'd like drink quite a lot afterwards as well and have quite late nights, and so my voice would be the first thing to go. And also because my technique isn't great, I sing a lot in my throat, which means I'd lose my voice all the time.
Yeah. And
obviously it's like a really terrible cocktail of things that culminate in being on a tour, losing your voice, and that's the one thing you don't want to happen. And then doing shows. And we would always push through. We'd never cancel anything. So
so good.
Is it? is it good to go out and do that? But so it was just, I think all of that kind of fueled a situation where I'd often just be on stage like not feeling like I was at my best because I wasn't at my best.
Yeah.
And not knowing what to do. And I guess the time that we came up, whilst the people around us were like cared, I don't think anyone, including me, really had the kind of language for the fact that it was probably panic attacks on stage, and the fact that I like was really, really anxious and really nervous, and what I was doing vocally probably wasn't great and wasn't the best for me. But because going back to what I was saying before, because like I'd never thought about a world where I would be in a band or be touring, so all of it was kind of new to us as it happened. And so for the first several years, we were so lucky when our music kind of was successful, and we sort of followed it around the world a bunch of times, but you kind of there was no real time to be told. No, there was no one saying like, this is how it works, this is what you should do. You'd get little bits of advice here and there, but a lot of it is such a big mix of like releasing music, making videos, being on tour, doing promo, traveling. You're kind of, there's not really that much time to sort of stop.
No,
and
you're
think.
Juggling so many different things at the same time,
which is an amazing thing to happen. But it's so interesting, now that I'm a little bit older and chatting to younger artists that are coming through, and they have a moment that's kind of similar to like what we had. And it's so interesting to see how different people cope with it as well, because it's quite like a uniquely bizarre thing. And whilst it's amazing and it's this incredible thing you never imagined would happen to you, being in the eye of that storm isn't maybe as fun as it looks. I guess it's like, and this is not a complaint. It's like I'm not shy of like working hard and putting in a lot of hours, but it's like quite hard work.
Yeah.
As someone that's very, very bad at stepping back and thinking about things we've done or achievements, it was always about thinking about what was next. But when stuff's that busy, which again is an amazing privilege, but often the sort of your experience at the heart of it can be slightly forgotten. And, we were young, and we were like pretty drunk all the time, and so I think it's been interesting as we've got older, and as I think just conversations around people's experiences, people's internal experiences, people's mental health, all of that have kind of evolved and been like normalized and more mainstreamed, and the language now exists for people to talk about those things more.
Yeah.
And you like, but I feel like you're a good example. You're a good example to set of being like, here's the issue, I'm going to confront it head on, and you tried to find a solution. And I remember at the time being like, oh my God, tell me about it. Like,
I think I'm the kind of person that's very like solution oriented. I'd say that's
that'd
the
be
German.
the business degree.
Maybe it's the business degree. Maybe it's the German side of me as well. I don't know.
When did we first meet?
We met on tour. I think the first show was in Dallas. This really strange, was it Dallas or was it it was this big hall in the middle of like nowhere in America.
Yeah.
And
As so much American touring
so
is.
much of American touring is.
So we toured together.
We toured together, and we did an American tour, and then we did a European tour, and it was so fun. And
Yeah, it was so great getting to hang out with you and
the guys
your
as
wonderful
well.
band.
Yeah, I feel like our groups kind of just meshed. We had really
sure.
fun nights.
We did. We had a
And-
great time. It was a lot of fun.
But I have to be honest, I didn't think you and I would ever write together, because I never wrote with another artist. I was very much like just me and the producer, or just me at the piano. And that's
Which I've got to say, like, as someone that's my like most comfortable natural writing environment is by myself, and getting to kind of ruminate and stuff. So I massively respect that, and I also never thought we'd write together.
no, because it also happened so randomly. You and I were going to my favorite restaurant, Yalla Yalla.
Yeah.
And I was telling you that I was meeting Jen in Iceland, and I was like, yeah, and if you are free, you're welcome to come. And you're like, yeah, sure. And then literally,
Yeah, you were like, what?
yeah, I remember getting in the car being like, are you sure you want to come? And you're
I was
like,
like, yeah, I'd fucking love to go to Iceland, and I'd love
But
to
this
write
is
with
what I
you.
love about you is
But
that
I
you're
also-
so
I also
in
said-
for this.
sorry.
No, you go.
No, I was interrupting you.
No, you
I
go.
remember saying at the time, because I was like, I know that what's one of the many brilliant things about you is that you know exactly what you want creatively, and I really respect that. And you know, you have a vision, you know what you want, you get it done, and I was like, I'm slightly nervous as your mate to come into that environment creatively. Like, what if, you know, we've all done lots of sessions with lots of people. Like, inevitably there'll be ones that are great and ones that aren't great.
Yeah, you can have personal chemistry with someone, but in the studio, it can be awkward. And you can be like, oh, I don't really know if I like. But
And there's bad days. There's like good days and bad days. But I remember saying to you,
Totally.
like, I would love to come if you're serious about it. But if I annoy the hell out of you and you absolutely fucking hate writing with me, I'll just go sit in another room and write by myself. But, yeah.
And in the end, we ended up writing, I think you were there for 3 days, and I think we wrote like 2 to 3 songs a day. We would let the others kind of produce in the one room, and we would just go off to the piano.
I loved it. It was amazing.
It was awesome. I loved that process.
This place was called
Floki
it
Studio.
Floki Studios?
Yeah, Floki Studios.
So I'd never been to Iceland before.
Yes, it was a great
and
experience.
Yeah, so it's like
What was your
Northern
favorite
Iceland.
part?
I loved the whole thing. It was like a little adventure. I've always, my whole life I've wanted to go there.
Oh my God. Did I make that dream come
You
true?
made my dreams come true. Thank you, Alice. So I flew to Iceland, got picked up by your manager. We drove a couple of hours along the northern coast, and it's so beautiful because Iceland, it's kind of stunningly bleak. There's no trees anywhere
No
because of
trees,
volcanic,
so you can
volcanic
see,
rock.
yeah, and you see like for forever.
Yeah, and it's so sparse as
beautiful.
well because like I guess living in the UK where it's quite built up and going to, you know, busy places, you're used to any coastline being kind of populated because people want to be on the coast, and getting to be in a country that was it's just vast, and it feels like architecturally different, the landscape's different. It was stunning. And then got to the studio, and it was like such a lovely group of people. The studio is amazing. It's such a beautiful
really
place. It's on this isthmus, which is like a thin strip of land between a lake and the sea.
What's it called? Isthmus.
ISTHMAS, an isthmus,
Wow.
I think is the name of it.
Never heard
I
of
think
that
it's the name
word.
of a strip of land between two bodies of water.
Okay.
I said that really authoritatively. I don't know if that's true. There were loads of Northern Lights when we were there, which was
Yes.
incredible.
Oh,
And
that
you
was so
were in the
fun.
midst of it. I remember getting there and you'd been working on a song earlier that day called Boogeyman. But I love, like, I think a bit like you, like we've said, that it's the new ideas bit that's fun, and that's like chasing the sort of spark of something that feels exciting.
Yeah, and also just being so isolated from everything and not having everyone in this. Because normally in a studio, when it hits like 6 or 7, everyone's like, "I'm gonna go now because I've got kids to feed or I've got to like be with my dog."
Yeah.
And then here it was like, there's nowhere else you can go.
It's interesting you said that. Like Mark, the producer that I've always worked with on Bastille stuff, I remember we were like our early 20s, but he was always really good at, insisting that sessions were like 10 till 6.
Yeah.
Which really, as someone that has a very bad relationship with like overworking and no boundaries, I'm really glad that I've always worked with someone who did put that in
Forces
space.
you to
So
have, yeah.
It's meant that like I sort of took that through my whole life, and like
Yeah.
evenings and weekends are always, if we're not on tour,
For family,
yeah,
for
like
friends,
for normality and trying
Yeah.
to step away. And I'm very, very bad at stepping away
yeah.
because, you know, if you're excited by ideas and working on lots of projects and there's,
Yeah.
you know, like all these tabs open in your head.
The pool.
Pool was amazing. So there's this pool that was about a half-hour drive away from where we were staying.
And I forced everyone to go there every single day in the morning.
Yeah, imagine a pool. So it's like it's this kind of proper swimming pool outside on the edge of a fjord.
Heated.
Like just heated
Heated.
pool. Yeah.
Yeah.
In this tiny village, but it was it's like their local pool, and so Alice, we would go there every morning first thing, which was an amazing way to start the day. So
Do a few laps. Sit
have
in
a
the hot
chat,
tub.
yeah, and then go to the studio. And what an amazing thing! I think what I loved about that, and your kind of insistence makes it sound like not a positive thing. You're kind of you wanting to do that every day was a good reflection of how like all encompassing and holistic you wanted the experience to be. Like you and I'm totally with you on that. I think you want the actual experience itself of making an album to be a good one and one that you look back on. And I like always remember getting to go to Iceland and all those experiences. It's really cool. Speaks a lot to, you know, in our worlds where you're always thinking about the next thing, or you're, you know, everything can seem quite ephemeral and unreal, to try and ground the experiences if you can.
Yeah, it makes you feel very present.
Yeah. I loved it. Yeah, thanks for having me.
Oh,
And I
thank
love
you
the
for
songs that come out of
coming.
it too. I can't wait for the
Me
album.
too.
So are you happy with the album? Are you proud of it?
I love this album. I'd say, I mean, I know probably every artist is like, oh, it's my favorite album, the newest one, but it genuinely is my favorite album. I can't wait to play it for people.
Yeah.
It's obviously nerve-wracking, but I think just, you know, having an idea and seeing it through to the end, which is also something I wanted to talk to you about. A big reason why this album came about was a conversation with a family member. And I showed this family member a few songs, and this family member is like really important to me. You know, like we have a really good relationship, and
Is it your dog?
it was my dog. It was Bernie, and he hated it.
Oh, Bernie, come on, man.
Fucking Bernie.
Fucking Bernie.
And after showing them the songs and them not really responding in the way I thought they would and saying, hey, this could be better. I realized it's so difficult as an artist or anyone having a vision to kind of get people on your side, to get people to understand what you're seeing. And I feel like sometimes we're like salesmen just going from door to door, just being like, hey, by the way, I did this thing and maybe you'd be interested in, you know, like joining it or listening to it. And how that is for you. And like, are there people in your process where you're like, man, they've really torn me down with this vision and really made me feel like it's not something worth following?
It's tricky, isn't it? You know, I feel like often as someone in a band or as a music artist, yeah, you're like, there's just like, it's so absurd what we do. Getting to make songs is such an amazing privilege, and it's mad if you get to do it and that anyone cares is incredible.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's interesting. I feel like I do it anyway. Like I do it anyway.
Yeah.
There's so many projects that I work on that never come out, and I feel like there are those
which probably a lot of people aren't aware of, because they only see the stuff that comes out, but they have no idea about the like 20 other things that you've just crumpled up in the corner.
The songs, all the shows, all that different stuff.
But does it affect you? Like, let's say,
Yeah, massively,
I don't know who,
massively,
if,
yeah. Being completely honest, all you ever really want when you play someone a song is for them to be like, "This is
amazing."
amazing." Yeah, like, for them to be like, "This is incredible.
awesome."
You're a fucking genius. Well done." And obviously that's just not the case, and is never going to happen. So I think people's reactions. I remember playing music to my parents when I was much younger, and my music was quite weird. Like, you know, I loved odd narrative pop, everything from like Anoni to Regina Spektor to Elton John, but like I would write these quite odd, rambling songs, and I remember my mum being like, "Oh, it's really interesting," and that was like a dagger to the heart. Interesting. You don't want to hear interesting.
Yeah.
But also you've got to remember the person you're playing it to. Like, maybe it's not for them. Maybe it was never meant to be for them. You know, maybe it's not their taste. Maybe they don't even like that kind of music. You know. So I think it's there's always a lot of like caveats with everything, right? But I think I've always found that, you know, like going back to Mark, the producer that I work with, you know, I would take him songs, and if he was like, "This is great, there's something here, but that chorus could be loads better," or "Oh, the production here is not as good," it would fire me up to go away, work on it, and bring something back that would impress.
Because it's constructive
Yeah,
and it's
exactly.
exciting. Because you're like, oh, it's like a job that I have to do now, and I have to figure out the puzzle because he believes in the puzzle, but it's just not 100% there.
Yeah, the challenge of being told. Like that was the thing. We had an A&R guy at a label once who would just be like, "This isn't it," and you'd be like, "Oh, okay, cool," but that's very hard to respond to.
Yeah.
Like on a
What
human
do I
level,
do with
on a creative
that?
level, on a work level, that's like, what do I do with that? Yeah, exactly. You'd be like, whereas being given like constructive feedback, I don't know, for me was always really helpful.
Yeah. There's a line in one of your songs that really spoke to me, and I wrote a song called Jane Street that's also on this album, and there's a line that kind of reminds me of something you wrote, and I wrote, if you found the words to change your whole world, would you keep them to yourself? And if happiness hit like waves to a ship, would you expect more from yourself? And the line that it reminds me of in your song is, you wouldn't wish this life on your newborn child.
Oh yeah.
And sometimes I wonder, like, once you've kind of seen the vision that you've created, looking back on it, are there things that you wish you could change? Are there things that you regret? Are there things that you kind of think to yourself, man, I really wish I'd kept those words to myself because my whole life has changed now, but I don't know if it's changed for the better. For me, for example, I have a lot of moments where I sometimes wonder, was this the right career path for me?
Oh, right, yeah.
So like with the sentence of like, if you found the words to change your whole world, like let's say the words to the song or to the albums that made you you.
Yeah.
Is there a part of you that kind of wishes that you hadn't said those words, that you hadn't written them down, that then led to this vision being created?
It's weird. I was chatting to someone about this the other day, and often with albums or songs, they're a timestamp of a thought you had at one point.
Yeah.
And then you move on and you do other stuff and you live your life, and I think that's what's so strange with songs. For me, I wasn't that intentional with the first album. I was just making stuff that felt good.
Yeah.
I wasn't thinking about how many people would hear it or what impact it would or wouldn't have on them, or if it would be like resonant in how they're thinking, or like an annoying song they heard on the radio, or any of that stuff. I think the weird thing with having a bit of success with the song or with an album, whatever, is that because you then are living in that world for a while, you sit in that thing you made however long ago, and you talk about it all the time, and you sing it all the time, and
you're kind of stuck in this
in this weird loop, which again is like, if you're lucky enough to have that, that's brilliant, but it is odd. So I think for the first 3 years of us after releasing our first album, we just sat in this thing for ages, and I think the way that my brain works, I always want to think about the next thing, and I'm always excited about what I'm making next. And, so I guess a big part of that struggle for me, struggle makes it sound worse than it was, but it was like doing the touring and being excited to get to like talk about and promote these songs that we made, but equally knowing that that was like 2 years ago.
Yeah,
I made this new thing. What about this? So that's an issue. That's kind of always been a interesting thing to reckon with. And I think there's the other thing that's kind of can be a head fuck for artists, I think, and is if you're lucky enough to have success, you then sit in it for ages, and I think it lends it an importance that it maybe doesn't have. Like it's, I think music, I didn't grow up thinking that I would do it, would spend this much of my time doing it, but I love it so much, so I wouldn't change anything. I'm so grateful to get to, to have the freedom to wake up in the morning when we're around, and get to, like all these buckets of songs I want to write for these different projects. Like that's amazing. And like you said, it's that place I go to naturally to sort of distract myself or have fun or whatever, outside of like normal life and normal life things.
Yeah.
To get to sort of get lost in your laptop writing a song about someone from the past or something that's happened to you, or like an imagined world or whatever. That's amazing, and I feel so lucky.
Thank you so much, Jan, for joining my very first podcast
I wish
episode.
I had cue cards and I could rival yours. But yeah, thank you for
Would you like to share? We could do it at the same time. We can go.
Cool, yeah,
Ready?
Yeah.
1, 2, 3.
Right, that's cool. that was we need more practice.